Hey guys, this is lab 3-1, and in this lab we're going to be using some data that we used previously in topic 2. This is accounts receivable data by customer and due date and invoice amount, and we're going to use the same data and we're going to do a couple different things. The first is we're going to calculate grand totals for the count of the number of customers, so just a straight count of how many customers there are in this list. A sum of the invoice amounts here appearing in column B, and then we're also going to do a count of the number of due dates. The coolest thing about Excel, and I mentioned this in class, is that there's often, almost always, multiple ways to get to the correct answer, or multiple ways to get to an answer, right? Sometimes there's not even a correct answer. We're just trying to get to an answer to a question. So I'm going to show you a couple different ways to get this information. The easiest way here is either at the bottom of this table of data we can insert formulas, or at the top. I tend to prefer putting it at the top just so it's easily visible. We could put in some functions here. So we're going to use our function button here in Excel, and we want to use we want to count up the number of customers. So I'm going to search for count functions, right? So we could use this first one. We'll click OK. This window pops up and it's asking us to tell Excel what range of values do we want to count. So I'm just going to highlight all of the customers here in the spreadsheet, and then I'm going to click OK. Well, it's saying we have 0 customers. So there's something going on here. What went wrong? So if we delete this formula and look at what we used. We used a count function here, right? And the count function says it's going to count the number of cells in a range that contain numbers, right? So we use the incorrect function here. We're trying to count a field that has text values in it, not numbers. So of course Excel didn't give us a count because there were no numbers in that range. So let's see if there's any other count functions that we could use in Excel. Let's look at the second one. Count A. So this says it counts the number of cells in a range that are not empty. That sounds like it will give us what we want. So if there's a text value in one of these cells, it's going to count it regardless of whether or not it's a number. Okay? So let's use that. Let's use count A. We'll click OK. Let's go through the same process. We'll highlight the number of customers. And we have what we want, and bingo, that's what we got. So we have 200 customers, right? So that solves the first part of this lab. We wanted to know the count of the number of customers. We also wanted to know the count of the due date, right? How many due dates were there? 200, right? So there's a count of 200 due dates, okay? And we also wanted to know what's the sum of the invoice amount. So in invoice amount, we can search for a function that will sum for us. So let's search sum. So it looks like there's one that's just called straight away sum, and it says, the description says it adds all the numbers in a range of cells. That sounds like what we want. Let's use that. Let's highlight the cells that we want to add up, right? And we'll click OK, and then we have our sum. Okay, so there we go. We've completed the first part of this lab. Now there's other ways that we can do this too. One way is down here at the bottom of the window is what we call the status bar. Okay, if we put our if we highlight cells, the status bar is going to display some information that we can use right away. So it's a quick tool in Excel that allows you to do some quick calculations without writing formulas. And you'll notice down here in the status bar, when I highlighted the cells, Excel automatically counted up 200 customers. Okay? We could do the same thing for due date. Highlight the numbers, highlight all the due dates, and we're counting up 200 due dates. Okay, it also gives us averages mins and maxes. If we right click, we can add all different kinds of things. We could have numerical count. We could, there's all kinds of, we could have average count, numerical count, minimum, maximum, sum. So all different things can be displayed here in the status bar. What's interesting is it's giving us an average date, and it's giving us a min date and a max date. And that's because date variables or date values in Excel are stored as numbers. And because they're stored as numbers, it allows you to do things like calculate how many days are between two dates. So there's 89 days between December 31st, 2021 and October 3rd, 2021. So that's the cool thing about dates in Excel. You can calculate the number of days in between. And if you were to reformat this, so I'm saying this date variable, October 3rd, 2021, is being stored as a number. So it's in a date format right now in Excel, but we could technically convert this to a number format, and it would look like this. So this is the underlying number behind that October 3rd date. It's 44,472. So that date is stored as a number in Excel. And where does that number come from? Well, what Excel does is it says, let's make January 1st, 1900, day number 1 in Excel. Right? So if we convert it January 1st, 1900 to to a number, it displays as 1. So the first day in the date format for Excel is January 1st, 1900. And all other dates are in comparison to that January 1st date. So for example, we said October 3rd, 2021 is equivalent to 44,472. So let's see why that is. October 3rd, 2021, right? We subtracted October 3rd, 2021 minus January 1st, 1900. We should get, well, it's 4,471 days, and that makes sense because the first day of the year was the first day in Excel was January 1st, 1900. Day 0 happens to be December 31st, 1899. So if we change this, actually Excel doesn't allow us to go back that far, okay? So, but anyway, you get the point. There's just a rounding thing going on here, but Excel stores dates with a reference to January 1st, 1900, okay? So that's one thing I wanted to point out. You can highlight over these cells. The status bar displays counts. We could do the same thing with invoice amount, right? If we hover over this, this is the second way of getting our answer to this question or to this lab. We see our sum is 169, 144.34, which is the exact same amount that we have up here. Now, another way to get this information, so let's just delete everything that we did. Another way to get the same information is to use a pivot table. So we're going to say insert pivot table, right? And we don't want to, we created these formulas up top in cells A1, B1, and C1. Let's change that, and let's only use cells A2, B2, and C2 through C202, right? So we're basically excluding what we had from our pivot table, okay? So we'll click OK. We'll put this into a new worksheet. And again, we're trying to figure out the number of customers, the number of due dates, and also the sum of the invoice amount. So we just drop these things down in the values. So we have 200 customers. We have 200 due dates, right? And then we have sum of invoice amount of 169, 144.34. Okay? Same as what we had here. Same exact values. Okay, so two different ways to get to the same answer. But now that we have the pivot table, we could actually do something extra. So if we want, we could add due date to the rows here. So we've added due date to the field here, and now we can see, within July, we have different invoice amounts. We know how many customers there are. On July 21st, for example, there's one customer, one due date, 808.94 was the invoice amount. On July 25th, there was two customers, and they had two due dates, and the total was for $1,249. And so now we just have more data that we can get out of the pivot table. And if we wanted to, for example, let's say what customers had sales on July 25th. We could double click, and now we have a sheet that contains information about, Audi and Mercedes-Benz had two sales on July 25th, 2021. Okay, so I believe the question that we were trying to answer here was we wanted the count of the number of customers, the count of the date. We also wanted to know the sum of the invoice amounts, and we wanted to subtotal the accounts receivable by date in the pivot table, which is what we just did here. Right, so we've now completed our lab. So hopefully this video was useful. Good luck in working through it yourself, and I will see you soon.